to share some insights in the past, present, and future of where Australia is going and where they've come from. We have Guy and Nick and David. And Guy is going to share a few thoughts from his unique perspective of being in cattle business for his entire life. Guy?
Thank you very much, Matt. Am I on air? Does everyone hear me? Is it okay? That's good. I've spent a lifetime in the cattle industry, and I was born into the cattle industry, and I'm absolutely passionate about the cattle industry. But in the last 20 years, I've become absolutely passionate about conservation, and it's in those two areas that I've been working. I've worked with and for the industry, with and for the government, and with and for two conservation groups in Australia. And I'd like to tell you about so basically some of the lessons that I've learnt. The first one is a very simple one, but it seems to be constantly forgotten. You can't have conservation if you don't have people. Conservation is not a natural thing in nature. The thing is that it's basically a human concept, and you need people in the landscape to do the conservation. And I know that Bill was talking just a little while ago about it, and I cannot underline that point too many times. We need a range of people in the landscape to do that conservation. And that means that we need to work with people, and we need to develop strong relationships with people. And it's really essential to build robust relationships, because there are always potholes along the way, roadblocks along the way, a range of issues that we need to deal with along the way. And the only way that we're able to deal with these is if we have a really strong relationship. And so I think one of the messages that we need to take home is that we need to build on these relationships, and also we need to work on them. What are the things that are basically essential to a good relationship? One of the things is that we need to have trust. And that's always the first thing to go out the door in any situation. People always seem to begin to shine shadows around the place. A little issue comes up, and as Matt knows, it turns into a mountain, and people duck and dive for cover. The area that we're now challenged in is going to be a difficult area, and it's only an area that we're going to be able to solve if we all work together, and we all work together as a partnership and as an industry itself. I notice in Australia at times that we in fact talk about the beef industry, and when times are going good, we all talk about the beef industry. But when times are bad, that industry fractures, and it turns into producers against processors, processors against retailers, retailers against people like, for example, the exporters. We need to get over this. This is actually one of the things that holds us back in this industry, is that we use the language of an industry, but we tend to behave as individuals. If we are going to make progress in this area, we need to work together as a team, as a partnership. So we need to develop trust. We need to be absolutely transparent in what we do. There's no sort of basically hidden agendas anywhere in what we do. This is going to require an investment in time and effort. These things don't suddenly happen around the place. And so another message I think to take home as well is that this is just the beginning of the process, that we're going to need to invest time and effort to develop the relationships, to develop the networks, to develop the trust, recognizing all the time that the first thing to go out the door, if anything happens, is always trust. And so we need to keep that at the forefront of our thinking. It's very easy to turn to legislation. It's a very attractive option for those people who don't really understand the culture and the situation of where we're going. And I can tell you that my experience is if everything else fails, we turn to legislation, and it's guaranteed to fail as well. So I think we need to be very, very careful about thinking about legislation, and it's a last option, and it's a very poor option. I would the thing is that I would suggest to people that it's in fact got a place, but it's only just a minor role, and that is to enforce it at the bottom of where we are, not as a blanket thing over the whole industry. We need to have the carrot and the stick. It shouldn't all be stick. So I guess the summary of basically more or less the things I've had to say is that I actually think that what we're talking about has a fair amount of science underpinning it, it has a fair amount of economics underpinning it, but the thing that is really going to drive it is people and relationships. If we actually develop a sense of trust, if we talk to one another, if we actually share so basically a range of common goals, we can make this happen. It is going to take time, and one of the things we're going to need to do is we're going to pick the low-hanging fruit first. We need to begin at the beginning. But the overriding thing the whole time is that we need to remember and recognise that the way forward is basically through people and it's by people. So for me, that is the major take-home message from this conference today. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Guy. Nick, Heath, with World Wildlife Fund Australia, share your thoughts on past, present, and where we're going.
Thank you, everyone. I've actually written this speech about 3 or 4 different times. It's evolved every day at this conference, but I think the place I'm at now is it's a little bit humbling. I basically had to fly 12,000 kilometres to come here and try and build a relationship with the industry in Australia that I probably could have done better at in the past. And so it's a bit humbling, but I'm just so glad I did it. I want to thank the Australian producers who did the same. I think when we talk about building relationships, it's easy to see it as rhetoric, but if you make the investment and you put the action into building that relationship, yeah, I think flying through 12,000 kilometres from your family, doing the jet lag, I think that's where the rubber hits the road. So yeah, I thank the Australian producers for coming all this way. And indeed, I think for me, it's a validation of this conference that it can bring people together in ways that maybe we couldn't otherwise come together. And so that's probably the first key, I think, in the pathway forward is how do we build real relationships, not rhetoric. I think you can build better relationships if you truly try and find the win-win. And the win-win's another piece of rhetoric as well. So I might put it a slightly different way. How do we sit down and identify each other's self-interest and then identify what is the shared self-interest? I think win-win and partnerships just stay as rhetoric unless we actually deliver value to what was in the past, maybe the other side, but we're actually all in this together. How do we create deeper brand value to the retailers so the consumers are even happier than they are now with the beef that they're buying? How do we create even deeper value for the processors? And how do we create a fairer, more rewarding and greater recognition for the producers who, they are just so motivated to protect their land. They love their land. We love their land as well. So, how do we all work together, understand each of our self-interest, and then from that create a shared self-interest as a win-win? And I suppose, I think Guy's mentioned and others, I would love to see a goal for the Australian beef industry that by 2050 or sometime it is the most profitable and most sustainable beef industry in the world. Maybe we'll start a bit of competition with some of the other nations in a very positive way. And I think that the only pathway through there, other than on the relationship side, is through science. And we are extraordinarily lucky in Australia to have an agency, an R&D, research and development agency, Meat and Livestock Australia. And they have just incredible research that we need to really dig into to find that profitable, sustainable pathway forward. And I think we've got to learn from the Cattle Council of Australia. They have the wise old heads of, not that old either, sorry, leaders, of the industry. I mean, they understand the language, they understand how to communicate to the industry in a way that I, as a conservationist, have a lot to learn from. But I think at the heart of it, if we grow more grass, we'll keep more soil on our land. If we keep more soil with more grass, there'll be more moisture, there'll be more carbon, there'll be more fertility. And if we can get some sort of fertility-based productivity and profitability, we're delivering more value to the producer without necessarily, increasing prices, unless we can actually deliver greater shared value for the brands at the end of the value chain, and then maybe we can do that as well. If we get all of that right, then I think it's far easier for us to agree to disagree when we truly do disagree, when the objectives on the conservation side are hard to reconcile with the production chain, and there will be those times. But I think if I fess up, what I think those things might be really early, and do it really honestly, and I hope from the producer and the industry side we hear that as well, I think we can maintain a relationship that builds more than undermines, and I really look forward to try and making all of this real over the next 5 or 20 years.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick.